All right, welcome back to Adventures with the Hat Commander. This is episode 3 of Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. We are starting to make some decisions in this game. Hopefully we can stick with them and it doesn't pigeonhole you into some decision. You know, siding with the Camarilla is probably going to be like the losing end of the story. But at least for this game, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I romanticize anarchism because I certainly think like the arguments aren't that simple against it. I mean, certainly, you know, there's a lot of people that live in basically governmentless societies and they don't just murder each other left and right. But with Vampire the Masquerade, I sympathize with the Camarilla and what they're trying to maintain in a society, mainly because vampires have and it is like a juxtaposition of kind of like the biblical concept of, you know, the natural man versus, you know, the godly man or something like that, where the natural man is the sinner, the one that does things wrong. And that's what the beast within inside of you is. But it's pretty significant. And it's like, if you want your society to survive, you got to keep those people in control that are going to screw it up, and their beast is going to screw it up. And so it seems like a little bit more like a dire need, because you have this thing inside of you, that ultimately will take over. Like you can resist the beast, but you can't control the beast. So if like you resist the beast too much, then it will just take over and there's nothing you can do. Whereas like regular people don't really have that issue. Like it's like, okay, if I, you know, resist, you know, the conceptual sin, it's not suddenly going to take over me. And like, now I'm like, okay, just because I didn't sleep with that hooker, now like the next day, like it's like I'm going to be uncontrollably able to sleep with the hooker. Like that's not reality. So, you know, so I've always been sympathetic to this Camarilla. You know, I certainly like the Anarchs and Bloodlines, you know, and I took their side in the story. But in that story too, like the Camarilla prince was like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, you know, and was like trying to get like some ultimate power and like screwing everything up. Like if he'd just been like, yeah, I'm just trying to maintain the city and everything's going good and that's all I want, and that was like it, then it wouldn't have made a lot of sense. So, you know, we'll see. Maybe this lady's going to have the same thing. She doesn't seem like that, but granted, you didn't really get that from the Bloodlines guy either at the beginning, I don't think. So let's see where it goes. This is going to be a shorter session because my last game went long. I was running a tiny Cthulhu adventure for my role-playing game group. The adventure is called Sisters of Yanithalai by James M. Spawn or something like that. Spawn. It was pretty interesting. It was the first time we really played Tiny D6. I know you guys are not watching this for role-playing games, but or maybe, you know, maybe I'll do something with that someday. But thanks for watching. Was that saying chapter or level? I wasn't paying attention. You knock and wait patiently as the footsteps on the other side grow closer. Finally, the door opens and Gregory, Sophie's driver, invites you in. You find that the lady herself standing by the window, silhouetted against the city's midnight glow. She stares out, motionless, like a marble statue. Is that the first time somebody's moved? I don't know. Hey, am I interrupting something? She doesn't react immediately, but she seems to snap out of some meditative state and looks at you with strangely blurry eyes. Yes, you are, but that's all right. I've been meaning to ask you something. When you look out at the city, when you see the lights hear the hum, smell the rain on the pavement, what do you think about? You gaze out. The lights and rain, the relentless honking below, music blasting from a nearby window, echoing off of buildings. Someone should record an hour of this and throw it up on YouTube as an ambient piece. Other than that, though, it's business as usual. The sights, the sounds, the smells, you know them all too well. Sophie watches you. You can tell she's disappointed somehow, but she covers it up with a courteous smile. Well, not everyone can appreciate the intricacies that the world offers. In fact, among kindred, my clan is somewhat notorious for finding innate meaning even in the mundane. What clan is she? Tordor's possible. She doesn't seem Malkavian. She's definitely not Nosferatu. Oh, what's the other one? The Tremere? Is that the other one? You see, the blood that flows within me is the clan of Tordor. Yep, I guessed it right. There are 13 such bloodlines among us kindred, though that number has been contested in the past. And these nights, it seems that nothing is certain anymore. I thought there was only 7. And then there's a couple that don't really operate around here or like aren't part of the Camarilla. And then I thought other ones were gone. The clans have gone by many epithets over the years, but the name used these nights have their roots in medieval times, the original Inquisition, if you can believe it. They used these to categorize us, describe our inherent differences. In time, we adopted them ourselves. It's typical. Each clan has a uniqueness about it, inescapable, originating from an ancient progenitor carried from sire to child. For the Toreador, the gift lies in a sensitivity of sorts. We are uniquely attuned to beauty and ugliness both. We can see either where most cannot, a blessing on most nights, occasionally a curse. The sheriff is of my clan as well, although you'd be hard-pressed to see him as such. Poor Kadir, it breaks my heart to see him in this state. Still, there's beauty to it as well, nothing like a good fall from grace. Try she might to act playful, you can tell she genuinely cares. She lets her gaze wander for a brief moment, but is quick to regain her composure. Then there are the Venture, known for their pride and proclivity to rule over others. The prince represents that clan, as it's quite common in our society around the globe. Where the blue bloods think themselves rulers, the Bruja like to see themselves as permanent revolutionaries. They call for a universal rebellion while being slaves to their own temper. We don't discuss the rabble much anymore, not after they've largely broken off with the Camarilla. To think they were philosophers once long ago. I hope to tell you more about some of the other bloodlines tonight. Say I meet a vampire first time, how can I tell what their clan is? Usually you cannot, with a few exceptions. Perhaps for some clans, the uniqueness I mentioned bleeds into their appearance or disposition, but even that can be misleading. The gangrel. Outside of a few very specific cases, knowing one's clan is less important than understanding who they are personally, what drives them, their wants and needs, weaknesses too. Speaking of which, we come to the reason I wanted to speak to you tonight. It is customary in our society, especially among younger kindred, to organize into coteries. Sometimes these are called by the prince themselves, or mandated by a fledgling sire. In our case, you may treat it as more of a strong recommendation. I want you to seek out companions, not only because you need to learn more about our society, but also because it is useful. True friendships are rare among kindred, but having allies, even temporary ones, is something of a necessity these nights. We might be selfish creatures, but we are drawn to each other nonetheless. Any suggestions on where I should start looking? I was just about to get to that. She put on a mysterious smile. I spent some of my precious time last night asking around and pondering potential kindred for you to meet. Came with a short list of contacts. I hope you'll appreciate the gesture. Forging a partnership with them might offer perspective and viewpoints that I cannot provide. Lenses through which to view our kind. They are all members of the Camarilla, of course, more or less. All right, then let's hear it. Who's on the list? Eager to learn about them, I see. Good, I'm glad. So let us start with the Tremere. They are a powerful clan, disliked by many, but feared and respected by many more. They have been an important pillar of the Camarilla since the very beginning. They are blood sorcerers. You look at Sophie with a hint of disbelief. Blood sorcerers? Pretty sure Mark from QA used to brag about having a level 70 blood sorcerer. Somehow you don't think he meant magical vampires. Sophie snickers. Oh, child, don't be caught with that look on your face when you meet a warlock in person. They really are adept at using vitae, their own as well as others, two unique and potent effects. Since you are quite rigid in their Since they are quite rigid in their hierarchy, the kindred I had in mind for you might need some persuading. His name is Agathon. From what I hear, he is quite the scholar, very ambitious, the child of a noted Tremere here in New York, Aisling Sturbridge. Spend enough time with Agathon, and I'm sure you'll run into her sooner or later. This whole blood magic thing sounds intriguing. Yes, fascinating. It is also a well-kept secret of the Tremere. Don't expect them to share it right away. Some things have to be earned. Anyway, if you wish to contact the young Tremere, I hear you can usually find him in a new age bookstore out on Broadway. The Tremere, is everything going to be like new hipster crap? Like, where's like just the regular guy? The Tremere have one of their workshops there. Gregory will give you the details. Now, this next recommendation comes with a bit of a caveat. As you recall me saying, most bloodlines have unique features that might not be obvious at first glance. Well, there's one clan whose members wear their curse on their sleeve, the Nosferatu. Man, what's with the goofy names? Guess they're really big on Blue Oyster Cult. Come on, you don't know who Nosferatu is? No wonder they make their havens in sewers, abandoned buildings and such. Their appearance is hideous and obviously unnatural. They walk the streets like other kindred, the kind would have learned of our existence long ago. Did she just shudder? It's hard to tell with her usual complexion, but you could swear her skin suddenly took on an even more sickly color. The one I have in mind is as big an eyesore as the worst of them, but he is no Adonis either. The one I have in mind isn't as big an eyesore as the worst of them, but he is no Adonis either. Still, he has some talents and connections that you might find useful. His name is D'Angelo, and he has an office, for lack of a better term, in the otherwise abandoned grain terminal in Red Hook, right next to one of those Swedish stores. The name escapes me, the ones with the awful furniture. IKEA. Swedish furniture store? You mean IKEA? Yes, that's it. My mind struggles to retain things that are aesthetically displeasing. Angelo does odd jobs for Kadir, digging up dirt, locating kindred who would prefer to remain hidden, the kind of work the Nosferatu are best at. He's on a case right now, something to do with kind murders, I think. After your initial brush with our dear sheriff, I think it would be wise to show some goodwill towards his agenda. Assisting D'Angelo with his investigation might be just the thing. She takes a brief pause to look out the window again. Now come the two more exotic proposals. Exotic, as if the blood mage and the vampire detective were business as usual. You may have heard about the Gangrel before. They are a wild clan, in touch with their beasts in a way others might not dare to attempt. They most keep out of big cities, but there are exceptions. Normally, they haven't been a part of the Camarilla for over 2 decades, but the one kindred I would like you to meet has strong, shall we say, familial ties to the sect. Her name is Tamika. Her sire, Jezebel, was instrumental during the Battle of New York back in 1999, the very same battle that cemented the city as a Camarilla domain. Sadly, her achievements have gone largely unrecognized. Tamika and a number of her siblings still reside in the domain. They were awarded after the battle, Prospect Park. Jezebel herself left the city some years ago, fed up with being underappreciated. Siblings? Actual biological brothers and sisters? No, not in the moral sense. The Gangrel sometimes use the word brood to indicate children begat by the same sire. As you can probably tell, they do take the whole animal motif quite far. I'm not sure how many of them there are, but they are rumored to be a tight-knit group. The Gangrel often act on instinct, so when you meet Tamika or her siblings, be careful not to slight them. They are easily provoked and can hold a grudge for a long time. I speak from experience. So you see, seeking out Tamika could prove quite educational, if nothing else. And who knows, perhaps you will find her temperament to be a welcome change of pace. But speaking of change of pace, I have one last suggestion for you, though it's one I don't make lightly. The kindred who calls herself Hope. She's a Malkavian. They are a uniquely cursed clan. For centuries, we considered them mad, insane, unhinged, but those of us who spend enough time with them come to understand the truth. It is no sickness, but a unique perception of the world that has them appear to us as unstable, and that perception can prove to be very valuable. Having a Machiavellian as your companion might be taxing on the nerves and a true test of patience at times, but their insight and intuition are unrivaled among kindred. As for Hope, specifically, she's said to be a recluse, but I have it on good authority that she can currently be found in an internet cafe. I believe it's called in Lower Manhattan. Gregory has the address. Where do you learn about her exactly? One of my colleagues told me about her. He considers her uniquely talented and tapped into the current fads among kind. Not something I'm personally interested in, me neither, as I'm sure you know by now. I take his word for it at any rate. Well, I believe that's all of them. I still have a few social calls to make tonight, so I'll leave you to it. Use tonight and tomorrow night to arrange some cordial visits of your own. I will send Gregory for you as soon as I have further need of your services. Oh, that reminds me. You'll need a car. Join us downstairs, won't you? She smiles once. I think it's going to be like a VW bug. Once more and turns to her driver. He helps her put on her coat, and the three of you leave Sophie's apartment. Sophie points to one of the cars near the building as Gregory hands you the keys. It's a rather inconspicuous compact car, a decent-looking, if not luxurious ride. Stay safe, Calvin. This is your first night alone. Don't let it be your last. Yikes. As you drive away, you find yourself with more freedom than you'd had for the past few nights. A blessing or a burden, time will tell. With a list of addresses in hand, you consider your next move. That's probably... Let's go for the Nosferatu first. Poor guys. Recent string of violent killings has the Red Hook district in Brooklyn on edge. Sophie mentioned that Kadir al-Esmai has a secret associate investigating the murders, a Nosferatu neonate by the name of D'Angelo. If you help him out, this might be persuaded to form a lasting partnership. As you make your way down Clinton Street, the incessant hum of traffic gives way to the ominous silence of the waterfront. You stop to take in the familiar bouquet of the Hudson, made all the more potent by your recently sharpened senses. Across the basin, the Red Hook grain terminal rears its rusty frame. Once a bustling industrial area, now a sleeping giant splayed out on the riverbank, forgotten, abandoned. Conveniently so, especially for one of the hidden. Keeping to the shadows, you sneak closer, dilapidated complex, making your way past hole-ridden silos and wobbly chain-link fences. By the time you reach the entrance to the main building, you can almost feel the rust particles making themselves cozy at the back of your throat. Not getting your hopes up, you give the door a slight nudge. To your surprise, it gives almost instantly. Looks like someone's been using it recently. Once inside, you find yourself in a large, empty hall. Looking around, you can almost picture it back in its heyday, stacked to the rafters with heavy machinery. You notice a set of stairs leading up to a mezzanine, most likely an office space. Then you see it, a faint light coming from one of the upper rooms. Looks like you're in luck. Quietly, with bated breath, you climb the steps and approach the dimly lit room. The door creaks open, revealing what looks like an old-timey detective's office, complete with crooked window, blinds, an overflowing ashtray, and paper scattered across a wooden desk. Suddenly it hits you, that nagging feeling. This is all too convenient, too inviting. Before you can react, the trap is already sprung. A plume of cigar smoke wafts over your shoulder. The barrel of a gun rubs against your spine. A raspy voice whispers in your ear. Let me guess. Took a wrong turn on the third silo? You decide to play along. Raising your arm slowly, you weigh your next words carefully. You're pretty sure a bullet to the back wouldn't kill you, but it doesn't sound too pleasant either. You mean this isn't Bloodsuckers Anonymous? A noise rattles behind your head, like someone shook a can full of gravel. It might have been a chuckle, but your guess is as good as anyone's. Wise guy, huh? Lucky for you, I have a soft spot for wise guys, I thought he might. So I'll give you a chance to explain yourself. A strange interplay of light and shadow, the stranger reappears behind his desk. Seeing him in his full, for lack of a better word, glory, you can't help but smirk. This is the dreaded Nosferatu. The way Sophie described them, you were expecting some grotesque monstrosity, but this guy, the clothes, the swagger, the hard-boiled detective routine, all comes across as a bad joke. Still, when it comes to appearance, his lineage is undeniable. From 30 feet away, he could probably pass for a bum with a nasty skin condition. From 5 feet away, he looks like something made to be seen from 30 feet away. He leans back in his chair, casually pointing his gun at you. Okay, he's kind of got like a Miami or Magnum PI look. I don't know what that suspender's doing on his shoulder over there. I wish they'd actually gone with like not trying to make like a Magnum PI hipster. But so what brings you to my humble office? I'm here about the Red Hook murders. Yeah, that. Nasty business. What's it got to do with me? A lot, apparently. At least Kadir seems to think so. His expression sours. Not a name you want to casually toss around, kid. But hey, I get it. You're not some random schmuck who wandered in here off the street. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Name's D'Angelo Chin to my friends, so you can call me D'Angelo. Nice. Who I work for is less important. What I'm working on, however, isn't going so well, so let me help. I want to help you catch the killer. His moldy lips twist into a smile. Do you now? D'Angelo lowers his shades for a few seconds. He sits motionless with his eyes fixed on yours. Suddenly he raises his gun, almost making you flinch. Almost. Then he twirls it into his shoulder holster in a flashy display that definitely looks like it was practiced a lot in front of a mirror. You see the Nosferatu's lips move, but the quiet mumbling clearly isn't meant for your ears. Listening in, you are able to catch snippets of his monologue. Sure, they seem to care. What was the end game? What was their angle? Everybody's got one, even if they pretend like they don't. Especially then, what the hell? Maybe this town's finally got to me. Pauses, sticks a fresh cigar between his crooked teeth. Maybe a good leap of faith is just what the doctor ordered. As he reaches into his pocket, you flash a lighter before his eyes. Or maybe you could use a healthy dose of unhealthy. For a split second, he gives you a puzzled look. Then he leans over to your lighter, puffing on a cig. As it catches fire, a wry smile comes to his lips. I like you, kid. You might look like a used car salesman, but there's just something about you. Tell you what, I was just about to head back to the crime scene, take a look around, refresh my notes. You can tag along if you want to. I could use an assistant, someone to take notes and make wild assumptions for me to shoot down. Who knows? If you're any good, I might consider making this a long-term arrangement. What are we waiting for? Just one more thing. You still got me at a disadvantage here. Seems like you've done some digging on me, but with you, I've barely scratched the surface. You catch my drift? So answer me this. Who was it that sent you into my neck of the woods? Or in layman's terms, who do you work for? Sophie Langley. The first time since you got here, the Nosferatu adopts a look of genuine surprise. His eyes wander for a moment, finally giving way to a crooked smile. So you're the one, huh? The fledgling the Toreador dame spared. Yeah, that would make sense. Don't think she'd appreciate you throwing her name around. Thanks for being an upfront kid. One blink is enough for you to miss D'Angelo vanishing from his chair. Just when you're about to look around, he reappears right next to you. Up close, his smile is even more unnerving. All right, moonlight's burning. Let's get cracking. With a certain fascination, you watch D'Angelo stumble his way across West Brooklyn. Oddly animated, incessantly scratching his face and neck, stopping every once in a while for a bout of mumbling narration. He is most certainly a sight to behold. Still, he seems to be getting around okay, and you take particular note of the fact that he seems to be choosing the darker, less frequented streets. There's definitely a method to his madness. Eventually, your leprous guide takes a sudden turn off of Van Burnt Street and into a particularly dingy alleyway. The torn pieces of yellow police tape are a dead giveaway. This has to be the place. Well, here we are. Time for you to earn your stripes. This is where they found him, drained dry, not a drop of blood in him. Before you ask, no, I didn't see the body, so I don't know if there were any bite marks. So what can you tell me? Take a moment to examine the crime scene. Judging by the chalk outline of the pavement, the man was killed recently. Curiously, there doesn't appear to be a trace of blood or viscera. You know the city cleanup crew isn't that fast or that thorough. Looking up, you notice a spray-painted sign on the wall. It reads, "The Blood Speaks," in big, crooked letters. You look to D'Angelo. The Nosferatu gives you an expecting look. You point at the spray-painted sign. That looks like a clue. Sure, kid. Might as well start with the elephant in the room. What do you think it means? You give a sign a good hard look. It's no Rembrandt. The writing is jagged, clearly done in a hurry. Nothing. It's meant to throw us off. Nah, I can see why you'd think that. But look at how crooked the letters are, barely legible. You can't fake something like that. Someone was very nervous, very scared. It's definitely meant something to them. And then there's the blood, or lack thereof, and given that the murder was committed right here and the victim didn't make a sound, we can therefore conclude that the killer was kindred? Bingo. Only a kindred could drain a human this quickly, this quietly. Tell me, if you were to guess, which clan would you say our killer belongs to? Wait, aren't the Tremere known as blood sorcerers? This was probably some effed up ritual of theirs. The warlocks do tend to get creepy at times, but they're not exactly the Manson family. It's just not their style. I might be jumping to conclusions, but my money's on the Thin Bloods. Nobody told me about the Thin Bloods yet. He pauses, spits out the mangled remains of a cigar. Shoot, looks like we're going to have to pay Larson a visit. Larson, the Thin Blood primogen. No, Larson, the bicycle repairman. Of course, the Thin Blood frickin' primogen. Not sure if he knows who the killer is, but he could probably make an educated guess. In any case, we'd be doing him a favor. If it turns out one of his is violating the masquerade, it would put him in a hell of an awkward position. I mean, crap and upside down awkward. It's the kind of weakness the other primogen would love to exploit. His position in the council is bad as it is. Pauses for a moment and mumbles to himself, but it's too quiet for you to make out it. Finally, he lights up a fresh cigar, takes a puff, and lets the smoke escape through his crooked smile. All right, kid, let's get this over with. Compared to the industrial ugliness of Red Hook, Sterling Place is quite a change of scenery. The heavily gentrified and pleasantly dull residential area emanates the sort of peaceful apathy that rich hipsters scoff at and blue-collar workers dream of. All of a sudden, the Nosferatu stopped. It almost seems like he was taking a deep breath, steeling himself for things to come. This is the place. With that, he points to a surprisingly nice-looking two-story house. The place is almost completely dark, almost. You notice a dim light shining through the curtains of an upper-story window. It's probably safe to assume the head of the family is working late, especially if the head of the family happens to be a vampire. Okay, kid, gotta be gentle about this. I'm talking velvet gloves, soft cushions. You rang, my lord, gentle. We need to get Larson out here without making a fuss or letting his family see us. If we blow this, he'll shut down like a speakeasy on a raid night. Trust me, I know. Sounds like you two have some history. Sounds about right, but that's a story for another time. Right now, let's stick to why we're here. Tell you what, how about you take the lead on this one? I'm curious to see how you handle it. Take a step back and look around the area. The light-up window seems like a safe bet. Now it's just a matter of getting Larson's attention, his and no one else's. As you're trying to come up with a viable strategy, you are suddenly startled by a loud noise. It takes you a second to identify the sound, as a dog barking. It doesn't take you long to figure out where it came from, as a bearded man leading a Rottweiler on a leash comes into view. You kneel down and pick a rock off the lawn, one small enough to not break glass, but big enough to get someone's attention. Deftly, you chuck the rock at the window. It bounces off the glass in a quiet but audible thunk. Moments pass in silence, making you think no one got your message. Just as you start to look for another rock, you hear the window slide open. Very unassuming and slightly unshaven man in a turtleneck appears at the window. As soon as he notices you, his expression sours, like he just smelled something rotten. He addresses your Nosferatu partner in what could only be described as a very loud and very angry whisper. Get the F out of my lawn, D'Angelo. You know gosh darn well, or gosh darn better, than to show your ugly mug around here. You glance over to D'Angelo. He looks somewhat embarrassed, scratching the back of his neck, clearly trying to find the right angle to play this. We wouldn't have bothered you if it wasn't important. Calvin, stay where you are. You wait out on the lawn, listening to Larson quietly making his way downstairs. Before long, he appears on the porch, locking the front door behind him. He motions at you to follow him off to the side of the house. There he turns towards you. What do you want? It's about the Red Hook murders. We think one of yours is responsible. Bullcrap. Duskborn's got enough trouble just staying alive out here. What could possibly make them openly violate the masquerade? Desperation. The killer's been leaving messages. Whoever they are, I think they know something they can't share with just anyone. I know it seems far-fetched, but it's the only way this puzzle fits together. No, I don't buy it. You're reaching, trying to find a scapegoat, getting your boss's good graces. Word gets around, D'Angelo. You think I don't know who you're working for? Then help us clear your people's name. What have you got to lose? Everything. I've been a thorn in the council's side for a while now. It's just the excuse they need to get rid of me. What if it turns out one of yours did it and you sat on your hands to protect him? You think the council won't jump on that? He looks off into the darkness, pondering his options. He lets out a heavy sigh. Look, I'll ask around, consult my sources. If it turns out one of my own is responsible, they will face justice. In the meantime, keep your deductions to yourself. I have enough trouble as it is. Deal. Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go back to my family. And with that, Larson retreats to the elusive safety of his home. You decide it's best to move along. You walk a couple blocks in utter silence. Even D'Angelo's mumbling seems to have taken a back seat. Oddly enough, you find his newfound reticence somewhat unnerving. Finally, the Nosferatu stops and turns towards you. Hell of a night. I don't know about you, kid, but I sure could use a drink, something warm in a tall, sweaty glass. But first, let me tally your score. Let's see now. You did make a good first impression. I like someone who can talk themselves out of a tight spot. Talking's cheap, bullets not so much. You held your own at the crime scene, nothing I hadn't figured out on my own. Hey, we can't all be professionals. Finally, when the situation called for subtlety, you managed to avoid unwanted attention. Discretion is what separates a private dick from just an old dick. All in all, you did fine. Not fine, but not bad for your first case. Don't let it get to your head. I'll be in touch. Let you know if I hear from Larson. Be ready to meet me at the office. He starts to walk away, but suddenly stops and turns back towards you. And bring a notepad. Every good assistant should have one. All right. Let's try this gal. Searching for Hope. Sophie suggests you meet Hope, an reclusive member of the Malkavian clan. She's supposedly holed up in an internet cafe in Lower Manhattan. Oh, I can't. I got to rest. Okay. You notice something strange by the front door of your haven. A letter has been slipped under the door in a cream-colored old-fashioned envelope. There's no name on it, but you know it's meant for you. Opening the letter, it's clear it's been sent by someone incredibly old-fashioned, rich, or a fan of classical stationery. No normal person sends letters like this. The note is short and terse, written in elegant, delicate handwriting. You're cordially invited to rendezvous at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. I'll be waiting to make your acquaintance tomorrow night. Look for me closer to God. There's no other information. It looks like you have a mysterious invitation for the following night. All right, looks like we're going to have to call this good for a short one. Thanks for watching episode 3 of Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. Have a good one.